She was a racist woman who thought love was for the young, until a black man proved it's never too late for true love. Linda Harper had built a life on walls, emotional, social, and racial. But what happens when the very foundation she's relied on begins to crack? What if everything she dismissed was exactly what she needed all along? Linda Harper didn't hate people, at least not in the way that made headlines or sparked protests. No, her judgments were quiet, refined, passed down like heirlooms polished over decades. At 61, she had mastered the art of polite intolerance, the kind that smiled tightly at cashiers who spoke with accents and changed the channel when those stories came on the news. In her mind, she wasn't cruel, just realistic. People stuck with their kind. Love, especially the romantic kind, belonged to smooth-skinned girls in spring dresses, not to women like her. Certainly not across color lines. "I don't get why everyone needs to mix everything now," she muttered, folding her arms as she stood at her window, watching a young interracial couple walk their dog across the street. "Some things are better left separate." "You talking to yourself again?" Karen's voice crackled through the phone on speaker beside her. "Just making observations," Linda replied, brushing imaginary dust off the windowsill. "The world's a mess." Karen chuckled. "You always said it. Glad someone's still got common sense." Linda smiled faintly but said nothing. The silence that followed wasn't peaceful. It was hollow, the kind of quiet that reminded her no one had called in days. No one visited. Her house was clean, her bills paid, her schedule empty. Bitterness, it turned out, didn't fill a room, Sue. She sat down with her tea. Her eyes caught a family photo faded and tucked in a frame. She turned it face down. "Hello, Stop Racism family. It's so good to have you here today. Before we jump into the story, I want to know where you're watching from. Drop your country and state in the comments and let's see how far our family stretches. Your comments mean so much to us, and honestly, they keep us going. If you like the video, leave a comment. Seriously, we need to hit at least 50 comments, and your thoughts will give us the energy to keep bringing you more stories. So come on, share your thoughts, give us a like, and let's keep spreading positivity and change together. Your support is everything, and we can't do this without you." Linda Harper's mornings were always the same. Quiet, efficient, lonely. She made tea the same way she had for years. One bag, no sugar, exactly 3 minutes steeped. The clink of the spoon in her mug echoed in the silence like a metronome with no melody. Outside her kitchen window, the neighborhood buzzed with the life she had long stopped participating in. Laughing joggers, young mothers juggling toddlers, couples holding hands as if they had discovered something sacred. Linda watched them, her jaw tight. "That one's too young to be wearing heels that high," she muttered, eyeing a woman across the street. "And he looks old enough to be her father." She took a sip, scowling. Or worse, her student. The phone rang. She let it buzz twice before answering. "Linda, you busy?" came her sister Nancy's voice, light and breezy. "Not really," Linda replied, keeping her voice neutral. "Just checking in. We're hosting a dinner Saturday. Thought maybe you'd want to come. You haven't been over in a while." "I've been fine here," Linda said. "Crowds aren't really my thing anymore." Nancy paused. "It's just us, Linda, family, and a few of Alan's friends from the shelter." Linda stiffened. "I'd rather not spend my evening talking to strangers about whatever cause they're promoting this week." Nancy sighed. "You're impossible sometimes, you know that?" "Only to people who think they know better," Linda replied curtly, ending the call a few seconds later under the excuse of a poor signal. She stared at the phone for a long moment after. The ache in her chest wasn't from the tea. She told herself she didn't need anyone. But every evening, she set the dinner table for one and listened to the quiet long after her meal was gone. The silence used to comfort her. Lately, it only made her feel exposed, like someone had taken the walls she'd built and turned them into mirrors. The cardboard box was heavier than Linda had expected. She cursed herself for taking 2 full bags of canned goods to the community donation drive. It was only a small outreach event hosted at the old library building, but somehow she'd convinced herself to contribute. Maybe guilt, maybe boredom. She made it halfway up the stairs when the box shifted in her arms. "You need a hand with that?" a voice asked from behind. She turned sharply. A tall black man, early 40s, stood a few feet back. He wore a plain grey sweater and dark jeans, clean and neat. His eyes were kind, steady, too steady. No, I've got it, she said, clutching the box tighter. Her smile was thin, professional. But thank you. All right, he replied with a small nod, stepping aside as she passed him. No attitude, no insistence, just calm. She climbed the steps faster than she should have, her breath quick by the time she reached the top. As she dropped the box on the table inside, she peeked out the glass door. He was still there, helping an older woman open her car door. She wasn't sure why she kept looking. "Mom?" a volunteer called from behind the table. "Would you like a receipt?" "Oh," Linda blinked, turning. "No, thank you, I don't need one." She made her way back outside, but the man was gone. Later that evening, as she washed her hands in the kitchen, she caught herself replaying the exchange. There had been nothing wrong with it, nothing offensive, and yet something about his voice, his calmness, had stayed with her. Maybe it was the way he didn't push when she declined. Maybe it was the way she felt, judged, though he hadn't said a single critical word. She dried her hands and told herself to forget it. It was nothing, just a stranger, just a moment. But somehow, it had left a mark she couldn't shake. Linda adjusted her scarf and stepped inside the community hall, already regretting agreeing to attend the event. It was a local civic luncheon, just a few speeches, a few tables, and plenty of small talk she had no interest in making. She carried herself with practiced grace, the kind that came from years of polite distance. The room was modest but warm. Foldable chairs, small floral centerpieces, name tags on a table near the door. She bypassed them. She didn't like being labeled. She had barely taken 2 steps in when she saw a tall man standing near the speaker's podium, flipping through a folder. He wore a dark blazer over a crisp shirt and stood like he belonged there, but Linda made her assumption in an instant. "Excuse me," she said, walking toward him with a firm tone. "They'll need the front cleared before we start. The setup crew is meeting out back. Perhaps you can help them." The man looked up slowly, calm, familiar. "I'm not part of the setup crew," he said gently. "I'm today's speaker, her." Breath caught. It was him, the same man from the donation event. Marcus. "Oh," she stammered, color rising to her cheeks. I thought—" He offered the smallest nod, closing the folder without another word. He didn't scowl. He didn't correct her again. He simply turned and stepped aside. The silence that followed wasn't loud, but it cut through the room. A few heads turned. Conversations stuttered. Linda stood frozen, her palms warm, her chest tight. She made her way to the back row without speaking, her heart pounding beneath her coat. The rest of the event blurred around her. She didn't hear the speech. She didn't touch her lunch. When she returned home that afternoon, she went straight to the sink and began scrubbing a plate. That didn't need cleaning. He should have said something clearer, she whispered to herself. He didn't even correct me properly. It wasn't really my fault. But as the water ran over her hands, the truth she wouldn't say out loud kept echoing in her head. You didn't ask. You assumed. And everyone saw it. Linda hadn't slept well since the luncheon. The image of Marcus's face, composed, unreadable, polite, kept replaying in her head like an itch she couldn't reach. The way he hadn't flinched, the way he'd simply said the truth and stepped aside. There was no malice in his voice. That somehow made it worse. She sat at her kitchen table, stirring her coffee long after it had gone cold. Her phone buzzed beside her. Karen. "So? You survived the lunch crowd?" Karen said cheerfully. "Anything interesting?" "I mistook the speaker for one of the volunteers," Linda replied flatly. "Oh, honey, don't tell me he was one." "Of them?" "One of what, Karen?" "You know what I mean," Karen scoffed. "They get so sensitive these days, you can't breathe wrong without someone calling you a bigot." Linda didn't respond right away. The usual agreement, the quick laugh, didn't come. "Well," Karen prodded, "he didn't cause a scene, did he?" "No," Linda said quietly. "He was respectful." "Then forget it. You're overthinking it." Maybe she was, but that didn't explain the knot in her stomach, or the way her thoughts kept circling back to how quickly she judged him, not just at the luncheon, but at the donation event too. She hadn't even asked who he was. She'd just assumed. She hung up soon after, claiming chores, then stood in front of her hallway mirror, eyes tracing the lines on her face. Something in her expression felt unfamiliar, as if someone else was staring back at her. Someone smaller. Someone Scared, she pressed her hand against the mirror's cool surface. For years she'd believed she was the one who knew better, that people like Marcus had something to prove. But what if she had it backwards? What if the problem wasn't the world? What if it was her? How's this story hitting you so far? Tell us in the comments if you're loving it type 1, if not type 0. We want to know what you think. Linda turned the key again. Nothing but a dull click. The morning air was cold. Her gloves were in the trunk, and she'd already been running late for her pharmacy pickup. She hit the steering wheel lightly, sighing. The parking lot outside the post office was half empty, typical for midweek. She popped the hood, though she didn't know why. She had no idea what she was looking for. Trouble? A voice asked. She stiffened before she turned. It was him, Marcus Langston. Same calm tone, same steady eyes, dressed in a dark coat and navy scarf, holding a coffee cup in one hand. My battery's dead, I think, she said. Or maybe the starter. I'm not sure. Want me to take a look? She hesitated. I don't want to bother you. You're not, he said simply, already walking to the front of the car. She stepped aside, watching as he peered under the hood and reached into his coat pocket for a pair of gloves. You carry gloves? I keep jumper cables in the trunk too. Learn to stay prepared, he said, flashing a quick smile. Mind if I check your terminals? She nodded, too stunned to speak. Within minutes he diagnosed the problem and pulled his car around. As he connected the cables, he spoke without judgment, without mentioning their past encounters. You'll want to let it run for about 15 minutes once it turns over, he said. Should get you home. Might be time for a new battery. The engine coughed, then purred back to life. Linda stared at the dashboard. Thank you, truly. He nodded. Take care, Ms. Harper. She watched him drive away, her hands trembling on the wheel. That evening she sat on her sofa, replaying it all. The quiet way he offered help, the grace in his voice. No bitterness, no reminder of what had happened at the luncheon. She had expected something else. A smug look, a jab. But he just helped her, like any decent person would. And that was the part that unsettled her most. How shocked she was by his kindness. How wrong she had been about the kind of man he was. Linda sat at her kitchen table, phone pressed between her cheek and shoulder, as she diced an apple for her late afternoon salad. The light from the window hit the edge of the counter just right, glowing warm across the floor. It should have made the room feel peaceful, but her chest was tight. I ran into that man again, she said carefully. Who? Karen asked from the other end, distracted by background noise. The one from the luncheon, Marcus Langston. My car wouldn't start and he helped me. No fuss, no mention of what happened. There was a pause. Then Karen's voice dropped, sharp and unimpressed. Linda, I really hope you're not letting someone like him get into your head. Someone like him, she echoed. You know what I mean. They act decent, but they always have an angle. Don't let them fool you with kindness, they're all the same. Once they think you're soft, they use it. Linda set the knife down, her appetite gone. He didn't ask for anything. He didn't even stay long enough to gloat. Karen sighed. You're sounding naive. And you're sounding cruel, Linda said, surprising even herself. The silence that followed was louder than any insult. Well, Karen replied coldly, you've clearly made up your mind. Just be careful who you trust. They said their goodbyes, but it didn't feel the same. The call left Linda staring out the window, the once golden light now harsh against the walls. For so long, she'd surrounded herself with people who echoed her beliefs, who reinforced her suspicions and biases so well she'd stopped questioning them. But now those voices rang hollow. And for the first time in years, silence felt like progress. She walked over to the radio and turned it off. Some noise, she realized, wasn't worth hearing anymore. Linda hadn't hosted anyone in her home in over a year. The cups were spotless, though unused. She arranged the lemon slices on a small saucer, adjusted the sugar jar once, then again. Her hands trembled slightly as the knock came at the door. When she opened it, Marcus stood there, calm, present, the same as he'd been the last 3 times their paths crossed. I appreciate you coming, she said, stepping aside. He nodded, once offering a small smile. I was curious. They sat in the sunroom. The tea was hot, the air wasn't. I wanted to say I'm sorry, she began. For the luncheon. For everything. Marcus stirred his tea without looking up. It's not about one moment, Ms. Harper. It's about what led up to it. I know, she said, her voice quieter now. That's what I've been thinking about. I judged you twice. I saw you and assumed something that wasn't true. He looked at her now, not harshly, just clearly. That's the part people don't realize. It's not the words. It's the assumption behind the words, the years that shape it. She nodded slowly, her throat tight. I was raised in a world that taught me to see difference as danger. That politeness was protection. That color scheme meant category. Marcus took a sip, then set his cup down. And now, I don't know, she admitted. I just know I don't want to feel proud of things that hurt others anymore. That's a start, he said, but it can't stop at guilt. I'm not asking for forgiveness, she added quickly. Good, he replied gently, because it's not mine to give, it's yours to live. They sat in silence. But it wasn't cold or stiff, it was something new, a space being made, not filled. And in that space, Linda didn't feel defensive. She felt real. Marcus glanced out the window, then back at her. Thanks for the tea. Thank you for staying, she said. He stood. People don't always change, but sometimes they begin to see. And for the first time in a long time, Linda felt like she had truly opened her eyes. The senior center was buzzing with chatter, the smell of overcooked meatballs wafting through the banquet room. Linda hadn't planned to attend the monthly fundraiser, but something inside her had nudged her there. Maybe curiosity. Maybe the small, unspoken pull she now felt whenever she suspected Marcus might be around. He was. Dressed in a charcoal sweater and pressed slacks, Marcus was helping a woman in a walker navigate her plate. Linda stood by the refreshment table, quietly watching, when the event organizer, Harold, approached with a clipboard and an inflated sense of authority. Hey, can you take care of the chairs near the back? Harold asked, not looking up from his list. Marcus paused, polite but unmoved. Actually, I'm here to speak today. I was invited. Harold looked up then, clearly caught off guard. Oh, right. I just assumed, never mind. The conversation dropped, but the air thickened. Conversation slowed. Eyes flicked toward them. No one said a word, except Linda. Excuse me, she said, stepping forward. Her voice was firm. That wasn't okay. Harold blinked. What? You assumed, Harold, like I did once. And I was wrong, so are you. The room went quiet. Marcus's expression didn't change, but his eyes found hers. They held there, not surprised, but something deeper. Acknowledging, I didn't mean, Harold started. That's the problem, she interrupted. You didn't think, you just spoke. No one clapped. No one defended her. But no one laughed it off either. She could feel the judgment hanging in the air, the discomfort shifting from Marcus to her. Some people turned away. A few muttered, but she stood straighter than she had in years. After the event, she walked out into the cool air, half expecting Marcus to slip past her without a word. Instead, he walked beside her. You didn't have to do that, he said. Yes, she replied, her voice low. I did. He gave a small nod, his hands in his coat pockets. It matters, even if no one clapped. I'm not looking for applause, she said. They walked in silence for a few steps. Then Marcus glanced over, just once. But you earned something better. Linda didn't ask what he meant. She felt it. For the first time she hadn't just learned, she'd acted. And Marcus had seen her not as a woman trying, but as one who had drawn her line in the sand. Linda stood at the folding table sorting canned food into neat rows. Her hands moved slower than the younger volunteers, but her presence didn't go unnoticed. It had been 3 weeks since the senior center incident. She hadn't stopped showing up since. Marcus walked past with a clipboard. Their eyes met for just a second, acknowledgement without conversation. It was enough. You sure about this? Asked Diane, one of the long-time volunteers, eyeing her with a mix of confusion and caution. I'm here, aren't I? Linda replied, not looking up. It's just, some folks are talking, Diane said. You standing up like that, now showing up here. Linda straightened a can of beans. Let them talk. The conversation drifted, but the whispers didn't. In the days that followed, she heard them in hallways, felt the looks in parking lots. Karen had stopped calling. A few neighbors had gone quiet. But peace, Linda realized, wasn't about everyone agreeing with her. It was about finally agreeing with herself. At the library event, she helped fold chairs. At the food bank, she sorted produce. At the outreach drive, she sat beside strangers and listened. Really listened. "You're back again?" Marcus asked one afternoon, catching her alone restocking flyers. "Looks like it," she said, wiping her hands on a paper towel. "No cameras, no one watching, just me." He smiled lightly. "You're not doing it for anyone else." "No," she said, "and I'm not doing it to make up for the past either. I'm doing it because I want to feel good when I look in the mirror." He didn't respond right away. Then, "That's the only reason that lasts." They fell into silence, but it wasn't the strained kind anymore. It was the silence of two people who no longer needed to fill every space with words. He left her with a nod, and she watched him walk away, not out of admiration, but out of quiet clarity. She wasn't following him. She was finally walking her own way. "How's this story hitting you so far? Tell us in the comments. If you're loving it, type 1. If not, type 0. We want to know what you think." The air was crisp as Linda and Marcus walked along the edge of the park path, their steps slow and unhurried. The trees rustled with the sound of changing seasons, leaves spiraling gently to the ground around them. Neither spoke for a while, but the silence between them didn't press. It held. "How's your garden coming along?" Marcus asked, glancing sideways. Linda smiled, the corners of her eyes crinkling. "I've killed 2 lavender plants already, but the third's hanging on. Third time's the charm. Or maybe I've just stopped overwatering," she said. He chuckled, and the sound warmed the cool air. She wasn't sure when it had started, these weekly walks, the casual meetups at the library, the quiet meals at community events. There were no labels, no expectations, but it felt like something building, slow and real. They stopped at a bench beneath a bare-branched tree. She sat, brushing a leaf aside, and he joined her. "I used to think I had to prove something all the time," she said softly, "to be seen a certain way, proper, controlled. But now I just want to be known." He didn't answer immediately, just looked ahead at a young couple tossing a ball to a dog near the fountain. Then he said, "You let go of the performance." "And I didn't even realize how much it was costing me," she replied. He nodded. "Peace is quiet, Linda, but not everyone has the courage to stay in the quiet long enough to find it." They sat without speaking, the breeze brushing past their faces, soft and steady. She wasn't in love, not yet, but she was present, she was herself. And for a woman who had spent decades hiding behind certainty and distance, that felt like the first step towards something deeper than even love. As they stood to leave, their hands didn't touch, but they didn't need to. Sometimes the beginning of love doesn't shout. It whispers, just loud enough to feel. The porch creaked beneath them as the sun dipped behind the trees, casting a soft golden hue across the old boards. Linda Harper sat still, her fingers curled lightly around a ceramic mug, its contents long gone cold. The air was quiet, save for the wind rustling the leaves and the faint hum of distant crickets. Beside her, Marcus sat, one arm resting over the back of the bench, the other draped casually across his lap. Neither had said much that evening, and yet Linda had never felt more understood. "I used to believe change wasn't for people like me," she said, voice low, as if afraid the air might carry it too far. "I thought I was too old, too set in my ways, too proud to say I'd been wrong." Marcus glanced at her, his expression open, but he didn't speak. He let her finish. "I wasted a lot of time," she added, "but I didn't waste all of it." He looked out toward the fading horizon. "Sometimes the last chapter's the one worth rereading." She turned to him slowly, the corners of her mouth lifting into something not quite a smile, but close. "I never expected this," she said. "Not you, not any of it." "You didn't need to expect it," he replied. "You just had to be ready to see it." Her hand, worn but steady, reached across the bench and rested gently over his. The contact was light, but it anchored her, grounded her in the moment. He didn't pull away, he didn't grip back, he just let her be there. The sun dipped lower, casting them in dusky light. The world didn't stop. No music played. But Linda's heart settled in a way it hadn't in years. She didn't know how much time they'd have, but she knew finally what it meant to begin again. Not as a young woman, not as someone chasing the past, but as someone who had chosen, at last, to live with her eyes and her heart wide open. How's this story hitting you so far? Tell us in the comments. If you're loving it, type 1. If not, type 0. We want to know what you think.